This is a News Scene 13 special report. Flood Watch 93, images of a disaster.
I'm Dick Preston in North Jefferson City. I'm standing where a break-time convenience store once stood. What little is left here bears witness to the tremendous force the mighty Missouri imposed on anything that stood in its path. The flood of '93 pushed the Missouri River at Jefferson City to a record 38.6 feet, more than 4 feet above the previous record crest of 1951. The result of flooding on the Missouri, Mississippi, and other rivers and streams proved devastating to the state. In all, 24 people died. 500 square miles of the state was swallowed up by floodwaters. 25,000 people were ordered to evacuate their homes, and when the waters receded, they left behind more than $3 billion in damage.
I'm Kermit Miller. You know, the Great Flood of '93 affected nearly everyone in mid-Missouri. Perhaps it was your home that was damaged or destroyed by the high water. Possibly you were among the hundreds of people who came out to help fill sandbags or to work in a relief center or came later to help clean up. Or possibly you were simply among the thousands of people for whom the flood meant water over the streets and on the highways, water which made it difficult, if not impossible, to get to work.
I'm Margie Ellisor. Within the next hour, the News Scene 13 team will show you the destruction and despair caused by the flooding. There are also stories about the spirit of mid-Missouri, neighbor helping neighbor, and people working feverishly to hold the river back.
I've learned that hard work can really help a lot, and these people really appreciate us coming here.
The first sign of trouble came during the last week in June. That week, the river rose more than 5 feet, and the Army Corps of Engineers was predicting a crest 11 feet above flood stage. That forecast sounded the alarm to evacuate.
In the basement of the administration building at Wren's Correctional Center, employees are packing as fast as they can. Vendors are pulling snacks and soda from their machines. Prison staff and inmates will evacuate sometime within the next 2 days. It's a process they've all gone through before.
It's a lot of hassle.
In May, inmates bagged sand, expecting the river to crest over 28 feet and flood the prison grounds. This weekend, it's happening all over again.
Everything that could be destroyed by floodwater is finding its way into moving vans and rental trucks tonight. Washers, dryers, even refrigerators. All of their worldly possessions will soon be on higher ground. The sunny skies belie the severity of the situation for hundreds of residents on Jefferson City's north side. In hours, this entire area will be underwater.
Just trying to get everything, get all the furniture and stuff out, all the stuff that won't ruin.
A lot of hard work you probably didn't expect.
Oh, yeah. I'm used to it.
We are moving everything. We're moving to my mother-in-law's house. And we got a fireman anyway, so we can move a little bit, but I don't know what's next.
At Tremaine's Airport Cafe, as they packed dishes and food, they remembered the chest-high water. It is forever marked on the door and in pictures on the wall.
Does this scare you at all? No, not really. It's just a lot of stress and a lot of headaches. We've gone through 3 of them before, so you kind of know what to do.
Evacuation of Cedar City and the airport were almost complete by mid-afternoon. The last of the airplanes had been moved to the National Guard hangar or had taken off for safer ground.
With the river rising at more than 1.5 feet every 24 hours, it's not only residents along its banks that are concerned about a flood. The Army Corps of Engineers and U.S. Coast Guard closed down the river to all boat traffic this morning and even canceled their 4th of July cruise.
3 days after the evacuation began, an all-night storm dropped more than 7 inches of rain on parts of mid-Missouri. News Scene 13 reporters spent the night and early morning hours covering what turned out to be the beginning of the historic flood of '93.
The floodwaters came up quickly, trapping vehicles like this one with 16-year-old Jamie Stafford inside. Rescue crews were called to the scene as Jamie held on for her life. After what may have seemed like hours of waiting, Jamie was safe from the violent waters.
And my car just started dying and it started moving, so I turned it off and water just started piling in. And there was a cop that saw it, and that's when he radioed it in. And I just sat there for a while.
What was going through your head?
I'm cold. That's what really was going through.
City officials have signs like this one out to warn motorists that driving is not safe when flooding occurs, a sign Jamie Stafford did not heed.
Like this, you can catch her unawares. Anybody that tries to go through any water is asking for trouble.
The floodwaters brought traffic to a halt in some areas as the waters continued to rise and the rain continued to pour. Jefferson Street looked like a river ran through it, once again flooding the entire area near the Park Inn Hotel.
Hello, this is Jeff Ray reporting live from KRCG Studios. If you're wondering why it's 1:10 in the morning and we're live, it's because it does appear that Jefferson City and surrounding areas are experiencing some of the worst flooding ever, and the rain continues across central Missouri. You can see the storms lining up from the west and stretching west to east. Though they're moving at about 30 miles per hour, they continue to redevelop. This has been going on since around 5, 6 o'clock this afternoon. It hasn't slowed down at all. In fact, we have a reporter live on the other side from where the gauge is in Cedar City. It is Jerry Resnick on the cellular phone. Jerry, can you hear me right now?
Jeff, we have been driving around North Jefferson City and downtown Jefferson City for the past several hours now, and as the rain continues to fall, people are working at a frantic pace to hold back the water. Right now, we have just gotten late word from Jefferson City Public Works Department that a levee has broken north of Turkey Creek. Route 63 north of Columbia is now closed.
By daybreak, North Jefferson City was under several feet of water. During a live report, Mark Slavitt brought Mid-Missouri its first look at the flood of '93.
The whole Cedar City area is just like a giant swimming pool, Mulaney. You wouldn't believe what's going on here. I talked to some residents. I've been out here since about 5 o'clock this morning, and many of the people woke up around 2:30 or so to water gushing into their homes. And if you can see down there, you can see trucks. There's people in boats. There's everyone trying to get as much of their valuables and their belongings as they can out of the area.
Nope, it ain't even up.
More than 8 inches of rain overnight has turned northern Jefferson City into a lake. Residents in the Cedar City area are trying to save their belongings with boats and trucks in the high water. Postal workers used a rowboat to collect the mail at the post office. Some people in the flooded area are still refusing to leave.
We're going to take our personal stuff out, take it to higher ground. We're going to try to stick it out because it's never been in this house. So I don't know.
Some are saying today's flooding is worse than in 1986 when the river crested at 32.6 feet. The river in Cedar City is now at about 31.8 feet. But this time the water came harder and faster.
Well, we were down here and the water started rising, the levee broke. It happened pretty fast. And we just started getting our trucks and stuff out.
So far, authorities are reporting no deaths or serious injuries due to the flooding. They predict the river will crest in Jefferson City at 35 feet. In Jefferson City, Mark Slavitt, News Scene 13.
With upwards of 9 inches of rain falling in just the last 24 hours, no basement has had much of a chance to remain dry. Nor has the subsoil. The earth simply cannot absorb any more water right now. And of the several earth slides and retaining wall collapses overnight, none was more dramatic than the one which hit this home in the 2700 block of East McCarty. There was no flood here. The weight of the mud simply pushed the foundation in.
Floors are bowed a little bit in the inside, and of course there's absolutely no support on the very front of the house, and it's not safe. I wouldn't go in there.
What's next for you then?
Hotel? I guess so.
Floodwater has turned Jefferson City Memorial Airport into a lake. Airport crews hauled most items out of the terminal before the water hit. Everything in the control tower is on the second story away from the water. However, some equipment still faces danger.
We have an automated surface observing system in the control tower. That was installed by the FAA and National Weather Service. And it's a computer system, and all the sensors are on a platform, and I think the platform will be okay where the sensors are.
Last month, airport crews put 3 seal coats on the runway. They're optimistic the seal will hold.
Over the next 3 days, several levees, including ones at Hartsburg, New Franklin, and Wooldridge, broke through, flooding thousands of acres of farmland, as well as hundreds of homes and businesses.
Just been here cleaning the store out, along with everybody else.
By week's end, the flood had claimed its first mid-Missouri drowning victim. The body of 36-year-old Glenn Leeton of Columbia was recovered from this flooded area near McBain. Leeton was reportedly wading through the floodwater in an effort to get to his parents' home.
You can't, the water distorts things. There may or may not be current flowing out there. Regardless of how familiar you are with the area, the water covers it up, and you don't know where you're going. And unfortunately, accidents will happen.
The flood forced Governor Carnahan to cut short a vacation to Italy. Upon his return, the governor took an aerial tour of the flood-ravaged areas.
I think one cannot be anything but just bowled over with the amount of loss, in this case, largely crops, the livelihood of these people, and with the number of homes being evacuated and people displaced.
One item the governor saw in the air was damage to the Wren's Correctional Center just outside Jefferson City. Speculation was that facility was already beyond repair.
The water in the main building has stopped just several inches short of the second floor, and the current is so strong in that area that most of the perimeter security, which includes the fencing and the electronic system, is rendered inoperable and has been torn down.
But despite the river's temper, Julie Geyer reports on some North Jefferson City residents who early on refused to leave their homes.
A couple dozen families are living day to day on what is the only land above water here, now called Cedar City Island. The Missouri River continues to rise, but this place is still home to people like Gayla Russell, who is not willing to give up to Mother Nature just yet. Why are you still staying?
Well, it's home. I don't have anywhere else to go. I need to stay here and take care of my stuff. You know, like I say, we moved it out of my house, which is flooded. We put it up on the, the hill, and if it gets that high, that's all my belongings.
After we got out of the boat, Gayla showed us where she now lives, in a barn.
Just all my household stuff, we just put it in here and made the best.
This morning at the Disaster Operations Center, Mayor Louise Gardner said she is concerned about residents like Gayla who want to remain in Cedar City, but the mayor is not calling for an evacuation at this time.
I don't foresee that happening. Hopefully, those people who live there and who have gone through floods know when it's time to leave the area.
And that's why residents like Leonard Woodling will hold out as long as possible. Leonard Woodling and his more than 80 rabbits have braved the floodwaters so far here on Cedar City Island. But if Leonard is forced to evacuate, these animals will have to stay behind.
We lost a few of them and saved a few, done the best we could.
Sometimes when you fight a river, your best won't matter. Leonard Woodling lives in a floodplain. The river created it. Before this flood was over, the river would take it back. Leonard was standing. The water would be over his head in less than 3 weeks. Why? The weather pattern was not changing.
Normally, the jet stream in the summer is located over Canada. Not this year. It stayed over Iowa and Wisconsin. As the Bermuda High sent its heat and humidity north, it interacted with the jet stream. That made rain, lots of it. In fact, 93 was the wettest summer on record for Columbia and Des Moines. Like any river, the Missouri is expected to reach bankful about twice a year. In 1993, the river had already done that 3 times, once in April, May, and in June. Then came the storm July 6th. 5 to 8 inches of rain fell across central Missouri. Through the night, the river rose 4 feet, going over 30 feet for the first time this decade. And still, the weather pattern didn't change. 2 weeks later, on June 16th, the river surpassed its 51 record level by half a foot, 34.8 feet. This was now considered the 100-year flood. Still, the weather pattern did not change. After a brief respite, the water started rising again. On the 27th, past its record set just 2 weeks before. And then on the morning of July 30th, the river went to an astonishing 38.6 feet, surpassing the flood of 51 by an incredible 4.5 feet. Dry weather had returned to the Midwest the week before. In fact, as the river crested, a drop of rain hadn't fallen mid-Missouri for a full week. The river started its slow descent, below its 51 record level 5 days later, down 10 feet by 10 days. And finally, after 50 days and 50 nights, below flood stage August 20th. But let's go back to July 16th, when the river stood at 34.8 feet. Kermit Miller took to the skies that day for an aerial view of the flood.
If you have ever wondered exactly what the old-timers meant when they spoke of water bluff to bluff, this is it. From above, it almost looks like there is no flood, just one very wide river. There is so much water you cannot tell what things are supposed to look like. Suffice it to say that the channels should be bordered by the 2 rows of trees in the center of the screen. The rest of this water should not be here. Many farmhouses which were above water just 2 days ago are not any longer. The town of Hartsburg bears silent witness to a valiant but ultimately unsuccessful sandbagging effort. In Jefferson City last week, the island supporting the National Guard helicopter hangar looked like this. But with another 2 feet of water added to the river over the last 7 days, it has shrunk to this. The so-called Cedar City Island in the middle of a flooded North Jefferson City is now indistinguishable from the air. And downtown, the flooding along Wares Creek is even more dramatic from the air than from the ground. You get a good sense of just how vulnerable the Whitten Expressway is and how indispensable the High Street Viaduct is.
Meanwhile, on the ground, sandbagging operations to keep those 2 roadways open were underway. With several other east-west roads already closed in the downtown area, getting around became a challenge.
I didn't know that the flooding was quite as bad as it was, but it's really pretty bad.
Is it tough to get around town?
Yeah, right now I'm trying to get to the circuit clerk's office, so I'm going to keep driving around until I can finally find my way.
Frustrating best describes the traffic patterns in downtown Jefferson City these days, not only for drivers like Mark Christian, but for thousands of other motorists and emergency crews. Rising water has pushed Wares Creek back up again, threatening one of 2 ways into downtown. Sandbags are already holding back water from the 5063 expressway, but city officials say one good rain could put it under. This map shows the extent of road closures. Only High Street remains open to traffic in the downtown area. Other closed streets include West Dunklin at Missouri Boulevard, Ohio and Kansas streets, and both sides of Washington Park Drive. The city is offering free bus and shuttle service for those who have to work in the downtown area and asking everyone else to remain at home.
Ride our transit system. That's what this is an emergency situation where we don't normally provide free transit for the whole fixed route system as an inducement to try to get out of the car.
Roads all over mid-Missouri remain closed or are threatened tonight. The Highway Department was out sandbagging today at the 63 off-ramp at 54, trying to hold back the water.
Highway crews worked this morning to keep the Whitten Expressway, Route 50, open, dropping a sandbag line across the Missouri Boulevard intersection and pumping the water back over to the north side. If 50 goes under, High Street will be the only available east-west artery. And this morning, the water lapped uncomfortably close to the low end of the High Street Viaduct.
And at what point do you decide whether or not it's necessary to sandbag the viaduct there on High Street?
I think we're still quite a ways from that.
Now virtually surrounded by water, the Capitol Plaza Hotel is open. Hotel officials are shuttling their guests from a makeshift parking area at Elias High School.
We've tripled our staff within the hotel, so once they're inside, they're going to be pampered to death.
The hotel's underground parking garage has been closed for nearly 2 weeks, but hotel officials were able to remove a couple dozen cars without damage during one period of low water. Just across the expressway, the Park Inn was also still receiving guests today.
We have just closed the restaurant after breakfast, but the hotel is open.
And the popular Zesto's Drive-In, now virtually cut off from the state government complex, is selling and delivering.
Yesterday was about half our regular amount. It's not good, but we're here.
As the river continued to rise, more levees broke, overflowing area creeks. And with nowhere for the water to go, it forced its way into several city neighborhoods.
How much more we gotta go?
The rising water came so quickly, residents living in this West Jefferson City neighborhood barely had time to save this boat. Several feet of water filled basements, destroying everything in sight. One woman with a broken leg sleeping in her basement woke up this morning in her bed surrounded by flood water. Some people evacuated their homes after thinking the flood was not a major threat to them.
You know, we just got everything up out of the basement and we thought the first floor would be safe. And I never dreamed it would get this high. Okay. I was going to move it all out yesterday and everybody convinced me that it was okay and not to panic and leave it in there. So now I'm wishing I would have moved it yesterday.
People living in this West Side Jefferson City neighborhood knew the floodwaters were creeping up on them, but they had no idea they'd see this much damage. They said early this morning the water rose about 1.5 feet in less than an hour.
The Cole Junction levee was the last river barrier to break in Jefferson City, forcing water into Grays Creek, which flooded these homes. Area residents say the water is now like a yo-yo, going up and down, giving no warning of danger. In Jefferson City, Mark Slavitt, News Scene 13.
On the east side, backwaters from Boggs Creek caught residents of South Johnson almost completely by surprise.
I never even dreamed it'd be over in this area.
Homeowners needed big help here: bags, sand, trucks, and labor.
Been at it since 2 o'clock yesterday. And not much sleep.
2 layers brick, 2 bricks wide.
Gotcha.
Then we put plastic up.
Across town on Western Air Drive, it was a sandbagging clinic. A highly coordinated effort of some 30 volunteers produced a sandbag levee 5 feet high and 8 feet wide at the Abbott home in less than 4 hours.
We discovered at the last minute that what we had done needed to be redone. But we're going to win. We've got a vendetta against the river, and we're going to beat it this time.
And we're glad to report the wall held and no water made its way into the Abbott house. No water made it into the Capitol Plaza Hotel either, but after the battle to keep Highway 50 open was lost, management decided to shut down.
Well, we felt that was the safe thing to do at this stage right now. We don't know how high this is going to crest, and at this juncture right now, access to the hotel is unsafe.
The hotel reopened 11 days later after losing about $160,000 in business. Employees of the ABB company were also out of work for several days when the high water cut off access to the plant.
Water rushing over Highway 54 and the destruction it caused is one image of the flood of '93 that will stay with us for a long time. The closing of both Highway 63 and 54 was the result of a hard-fought battle against Mother Nature that was just not winnable.
They said it would never happen, but today the Missouri River swallowed up the northbound lanes of Highway 63, shutting down traffic in both directions from Jefferson City to Ashland.
Go all the way around. You have to go all the way around Columbia and come back through. It's all closed up there. Water over the Circuit Creek Bridge.
Where were you planning on going?
Moberly?
Is this an inconvenience for you?
Yes, some, but it's nothing you can't work around.
More than 13,000 cars travel along 63 from Jefferson City to Columbia every day. Today, Highway Department crews were busy closing down this main artery and redirecting traffic up 54 to Kingdom City.
Some of them are lost. Some of them don't know how to get to where they need to go with the roads closed, so.
63 was expanded to 4 lanes in the mid-'80s, and engineers purposely built the roadway on higher ground to avoid situations just like this.
They looked at maximum flood data and tried to plan to get them up as high as they economically could and still yet avert many floods, and they've done that.
Up until today?
Up until today. This is a big one.
Now, as far as the situation along Highway 54, sandbags are holding back the water from the roadway, and Myers says the river will have to rise another foot before Highway 54 is in jeopardy. In Callaway County, I'm Deborah Levy for News Scene 13.
Highway 54 remained open for nearly 2 more weeks, and it was not high water that forced the twin bridges to be shut down at first. Highway 54 was closed for 12 hours on July 28th and the entire area evacuated, while emergency crews secured this 20,000-gallon tank that had floated loose from its moorings and was spewing propane.
That tank has the possibility of rocketing, given the fact that there's nothing but water out there. It could plane out across the water. There could be a tremendous fireball.
By evening, the tank was removed from the river and Highway 54 was reopened. But traffic flowed only for a few more hours, as we reported live the very next day on our 6 o'clock news.
We are live at the Missouri River Bridge at Jefferson City, which tonight, for the second day in a row, is closed. No traffic moving across the Highway 54-63 bridge in either direction. It was closed a little over an hour ago due to rising floodwaters on the other side. There has been a battle all day today to try and save that roadway, and Julie Geyer was there for much of it. Julie?
Well, Kermit, you and I are both out on Highway 54 today, of course, watching as workers fought this war against Mother Nature. It is a battle that at this point seems lost, but one these crews said they would fight until the end.
Highway 54 was down to one lane in each direction, and that meant bumper-to-bumper traffic during morning rush hour.
That was pretty busy. There was a lot of people coming through.
Highway workers were constantly sandbagging and setting up concrete barriers to keep floodwater off the road. Seepage forced drivers to slow down as they came into the capital city. A fire truck's water jet was doing all it could to shoot the excess over traffic and into a ditch.
If you go down there and look, you would agree too, if you can walk through water on the other side of the barrier would be almost waist deep. We're doing a pretty good job. If it comes over or breaches it, I don't know. We'll just have to fight it out the best we can.
Firefighter Don Bilbrey looked as if he were sitting on a barrier holding back the floodwater himself. He wishes it could be that easy.
Yeah, I've been watching it for the last, since yesterday, since they started putting the barricade up. In the last 24 hours, it's probably raised maybe a foot or better.
But as we take a look behind us, it's kind of an eerie sight to think that no sound of traffic, all we hear is the roaring river.
And that's something you rarely hear, is the sound of the water, but tonight it is the omnipresent sound for you. Highway crews are also working feverishly at this hour to save Interstate Highway 70, the bridge at the Missouri River at Rocheport. Workers are building a temporary levee there out of concrete dividers, plastic sheeting, sandbags similar to the ones which were used here on Highway 54. One westbound lane is shut down at this hour, backing up traffic, we are told, for 10 miles or more from Rocheport all the way to the city of Columbia. I-70 eastbound lanes, we are told, are not affected yet. Now, highway officials are advising motorists to stay home tonight unless travel is an emergency and is absolutely necessary. And joining me here now is Jim Toft, the district highway engineer for Mid-Missouri. Jim, bring us up to date. You basically are just letting the river have Highway 54 north of the bridge here in Jeff City, correct?
That's right, Kermit. Along about 4:30, the barrier started moving on us, and we felt like it was unsafe for anybody to continue to cross that area. We got our workers, took our equipment, and got out of the way before it finally collapsed.
River currents run through what used to be a highway. Pieces of roadway are lost to the mighty Missouri. Hopes of a reopening are now weeks away. A big chunk of northbound Highway 54 is missing tonight, as the currents have once again shown their strength.
It's all the roadways that have been this soft that we're going to turn traffic loose, and we know we're just going to be a mess.
A mess indeed, and Highway 54 is included in that. Mother Nature has taken many roadways with her, along with damaging ramps like the one at Highway 6394, just north of Jefferson City.
The off-ramps are damaged to some extent, but we think we can patch those up pretty fast and make everything workable, at least by the time we see the water down on 63.
I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't seen it. I just can't believe the water and the strength that water has had against this concrete and the bridges. It's impossible.
The damage is unbelievable. Strong currents are the only things moving on US 54. Some have likened the devastation to an earthquake. 100-foot craters, buckled beltways, the sound of rushing water, not automobiles. With pieces of the highway now missing and bridges closed, detours around the city are expected to last for a while.
I just feel sorry for the people in Hope Summit. You know, I don't know what they'll do to get across and get to work.
Does it shock you?
Yeah, it does. I can't believe the water ever got this high.
The Highway and Transportation Department hopes to have traffic moving over the bridges by Wednesday, but are still afraid they'll find the damage is even worse.
With all the current and the pressure and everything, it just ate away. They lifted the asphalt up and got into the fill, and then it just undermined it at that point. We'll have to put a base back and everything and start from scratch on that part.
The Missouri River still has to fall several more feet until the Highway Department can let traffic move along this once busy highway. But even then, they say it could take several months until US 54 is back to normal. In Callaway County, Gerald Resnick, News Scene 13.
With highways 54 and 63 both shut down, a 45-minute trip between Columbia and Jefferson City became an hour and 45 minutes. The long detour prompted the state to set up a shuttle bus to get workers from Columbia to Jefferson City. 3 days after Highway 54 was closed, the floodwaters began to recede. The northbound lanes were badly damaged, looking somewhat like they had been bombed from the air. But only after 1 day of cleanup, traffic was flowing again on the southbound lane. However, with Highway 63 still closed, traveling through the twin bridges was slow, with backups of up to 2 miles.
This morning we left at 7:15. We got to work at 8:15.
On time?
No. 45 minutes late.
When the water had cleared from Highway 63, it too was badly damaged, but temporary repairs were completed by mid-August, allowing traffic to move single file on the northbound lanes. Highway 54 reopened to 4 lanes of traffic 1 week later.
If having both highways 63 and 54 closed were not inconvenience enough for residents north of the river, some customers also lost natural gas service for nearly a month. Crews from Union Electric spent the morning in knee-deep water in the mill bottom trying to keep pressure in the gas line that runs beneath the river. It didn't work.
About 1,500 customers have lost service in the communities of Ashland, Hartsburg, New Bloomfield, and Holt Summit.
Crews spent several days constructing a pipeline the length of the Missouri River Bridge, thus bypassing the pipeline under the river. Meantime, in Columbia, the concern was for the city's water supply. For several weeks, floodwaters edged closer to a sandbag wall constructed around the city's water purification plant located near the Missouri River at McBain.
The flood of '93 touched many Midwesterners. In Missouri, from Kansas City to St. Louis, from Canton to Cape Girardeau, hundreds of Missouri cities and towns found themselves underwater.
Morrison residents battled it out with Mother Nature and lost. Cliff Rost worked for what used to be Morrison Lumber. The store is now 8 to 10 feet underwater. The levees held up. The water just rose above them, so quickly, in fact, that residents had little or no time to pack up their belongings. They could just watch and pray as floodwaters turned city streets into canals and homes into swimming pools.
Derek Hauser took this home video Thursday afternoon as plastic toy parts came floating out of Stevens Manufacturing Company. 5 open loading docks of the toy company are in water up to the door, with toys floating out. About 200 people work at the plant, which makes and sells toys to retailers.
Well, my wife's out of a job for a while anyway, until they relocate or get something set up. It was unreal, the water pouring out of this building here.
Got about an 8-foot flood wall that runs around the building. They were sandbagging it, and they were bracing up the flood wall, and part of it cracked, and water just started gushing in.
When the flood wall caved in, 8 feet of water came crashing down on this toy factory. Company officials aren't sure how much they've lost in a dollar amount, but they're pretty sure they lost almost everything.
Other businesses in downtown Herman are also victims of the flood. Jay's grocery store is filled with flood water and snakes. Employees are patrolling the supermarket to keep looters out.
The main levee on the Missouri River near Hartsburg is the town's only hope. That is why residents continued sandbagging today. One levee has broken, another overtopped by the river, and if this one doesn't hold out, 3 to 4 feet of water could come to this part of town.
That is our only hope. We need that big levee to stay in place and the river to go down, so because that big levee In '73, when it came out, it washed an awful big hole in there, and we had a lot of work to get it put back together. So,
in the face of potential disaster, everyone is trying to help.
Mostly, I've been moving sandbags. We've got quite a few volunteers that came up with this. It's getting difficult to get volunteers up there because the only way to get them up there is a boat.
It's the only way anyone can get around here. At 6:30 this morning, Mel Reifsteck and her family watched the water make its way into their mobile home. She knew they would have to get out.
You work all your life for this, and then this happens. There's nothing else I can really put it. I mean, everybody has tried their hardest and everything, but it's not only me, it's everybody else. It just devastates you.
This town of more than 100 people has watched the population shrink to about 50 residents the past 2 weeks. Now all the rest of them can do is sit and wait.
I hope it don't get in my house, but it never has, but it could. So I won't be leaving town.
You're going to stay?
I'm going to stay.
Unless you live in Hartsburg, you won't get far into town. A roadblock has been set up here about 1/8 of a mile from Hartsburg's limits, all in an effort to keep sightseers out of the way as this town prepares for the worst. In Hartsburg, Julie Geyer, News Scene 13.
The flooding here in Bonnets Mill is putting quite a strain on residents. Jack Fork owns what used to be Crazy Horse Saloon. He's been so worried about the flood damage and loss of revenue, he had to be checked into a hospital.
But this was a little more than we could stand. I mean, I've been cut off 6 times now in the last 6 months, but it's the first time it's been in the building.
Bonnets Mill sits along the Osage River, and the entire town is on the National Registry of Historic Places. Most of these buildings have withstood the test of time, but time isn't the only element testing them these days. So is Mother Nature.
Right now the floors are buckling, and I've got to keep them nailed down. If it don't get a whole lot higher to where it actually gets up on the flooring and stuff, we can keep this building just the way we want it kept.
The flooding that you're looking at stems from problems along the Missouri River. Residents in Bonnets Mill could get a double whammy. Officials at Bagnell Dam are expecting to open up the floodgates, which would send millions of gallons of additional water into the already flooded Osage.
Oh, God.
People in Rocheport lost 2 sandbag levees about 4 o'clock this morning. Volunteers were literally up to their necks in water trying to save nearly 20 homes. Members of the Langdon family have lived in this house for nearly 40 years. Floodwaters have turned this home into an island surrounded by sandbags.
Still got the house. I don't know how deep it's getting or anything because I haven't been in.
Are you scared?
Oh, yeah.
Several other Rocheport homes are in critical condition. Sandbags are starting to weaken as the water continues to rise.
Just a lot of pressure against it, and these bags have been in the water for a long time, and so their integrity is starting to collapse on us a little bit. But keep trying. As long as people keep coming to help us, we're going to hang in here.
Shovel after shovel, sandbag after sandbag, pile after pile. Volunteers here in Rocheport are doing all they can to save this tiny river community. But the question still remains, who will win this battle, the people or the river?
You are, of course. Is there any doubt?
Volunteers are optimistic their efforts will pay off.
So much effort and good-hearted people.
See, this is our country at its best.
CBS This Morning broadcasted live from Rocheport while interviewing Ross Perot. CBS anchorman Harry Smith says the flood of '93 is the worst catastrophe he's ever covered.
I stopped crying a couple of days ago. I just, you get all filled up, and it's really inspirational.
Nearly 200 volunteers sandbagged in Rocheport, but more help is needed in Boone County.
Near Glasgow, a railroad bridge collapsed. 2 spans of the bridge gave way due to the pressures from the floodwaters. No traffic had been running on that bridge for several weeks.
If you think walking through floodwater is tough, try it while harnessing cattle. This animal resisted, but volunteers from Osage City put up a good effort to get 2 calves out of harm's way.
They were spooked by the water, and we couldn't move very fast, and it's just very limited what we could do, except that we had to get them rounded up and get them out because they was up to their bellies in the water.
Residents in the town of 40 were asked to evacuate early today after a 3rd break occurred on a nearby levee. Most stayed here and joined with others from mid-Missouri to sandbag.
At times, plastic was in short supply, slowing down the task, but it did not dampen their spirits.
I helped sandbag out on the west end of Jeff City last night, so I'm just kind of in the mood right now.
Ernest Rosger grew up in this home on Grand Avenue, now owned by his brother-in-law and surrounded by almost a foot of water. Ernest believes this disaster is teaching people what being a neighbor is all about.
It used to be this way years ago, and then it drifted away. You didn't even know your neighbor. When a disaster like this hits, they all get together, and it's a wonderful thing.
It was way back in the late 1920s when people first started coming to Osage City to help build a railroad here along the Osage River. Today, many of their descendants and even people who don't live here are now doing everything they can to keep this town from going underwater. In Osage City, Julie Geyer, News Scene 13.
While the Missouri River was wreaking havoc in the central part of the state, the mighty Mississippi was doing the same along the state's eastern border. In some cases, entire houses were swept away by the water. As levees broke, people ran for cover. At times, the water came up so fast it was impossible to escape. 8 bridges that span the Mississippi between Missouri, Illinois, and Iowa were shut down. From Canton to Cape Girardeau, thousands of Missouri residents sandbagged in an effort to save their town, their homes, and their livelihoods. In South St. Louis County, 6 people died when they became trapped in a cave during a thunderstorm in the resulting flash flood.
Here's mine again. See how it's all caved in? It's just gone. There, yeah, it's gone. It's not there.
Reality set in for Brenda Schneiders 6 days after the record crest of 38.2 feet. That's when she and other North Jefferson City residents first viewed videotapes of their flooded homes.
I'm not going back. There's nothing to go back to. The trailer is destroyed. I grew up in that trailer as a child. And now it's gone. It was just given to me in February as an inheritance. Oh, no, I have nothing left.
Look at Linda's house. The whole side is gone.
As in the case of Highway 54, the damage left behind by the floodwaters is best described in North Jefferson City as unbelievable, looking much like a war zone. Gerald Resnick went along as one resident returned to her flooded-out home for the first time.
It actually belongs to
Karen White won't soon forget the ride to her childhood home. It's her first time back since the river rose again. Most of the neighborhood where she grew up now lies in ruin. At her mother's home, the sight is too much for words.
This isn't the way you left this house, is it? Oh, no. No, it was not. They worked so hard for what they had.
White says the current not only washed away her memories of growing up here, it leaves a permanent scar. Of the 130 homes in Cedar City, 80% are heavily damaged. Dozens no longer exist.
This graveyard of homes is testimony to the power of the Missouri River. For every story you find in town, there are 10 others to tell the devastating tale.
This is my house down here, mine and my girlfriend's house. It's destroyed on the inside. Them are Happy's houses, they're destroyed. Kevin Hicks's house, it's destroyed.
Doug Lammers hoped to build a family in North Jefferson City. Now he's not so sure. And even as some scrub away the flood of 1993...
She's going to get her a trailer, try to get her a place and start all over. That's all she can do. You're not going to come back here? Oh, no, she'll never come back.
In North Jefferson City, Gerald Resnick, News Scene 13.
Prison officials, along with State Representative Gracia Backer, took a tour of the Rennes Correctional Center for women. The floodwater is now low enough to assess some of the damage. Most of the facility has been completely destroyed by the raging current of the Missouri River. Everything inside the prison is covered with mud, and a bad odor fills the air. Prison officials say chances are Rennes will never reopen.
It's too early to say, but it looks less and less likely that that could be possible. This is heartbreaking. This is many, many years of people's lives and people's work washed away and covered in mud. It's the extent of the devastation is truly profound.
Most of the destruction at Rennes occurred after the river swept away much of the surrounding fence. Those on hand for the tour say reopening would be just like starting over.
No.
You see that fuel tank dispenser there?
This is the fourth time in the last 12 years that Marty Brose has taken a boat trip around Jefferson City's Memorial Airport. But what the Public Works Director saw today was not as bad as he feared. 11 feet of water covered the airport's terminal building, control tower, sheds, and hangars. But for the most part, those buildings are in remarkably good shape. The runway is still underwater, so Brose dragged an oar outside the boat to check for holes or breakups on the strip.
We went down the runway and tried to sound the runway, and it seems like all the pavement looks like it's there. I'm not sure we had too much washing of pavement out. I don't think we have anything like people saw on 54. I think we have pavement.
The JCs seem to be everywhere this summer, helping flood victims all over Jefferson City. This time it's Dick Tremaine's turn. The dishes he left at the airport cafe are now on their way to the fairgrounds for a little cleaning.
Collected up all of his dishes, and we're going to take them out to the JC Fairground and wash them and sterilize them, and we're going to store them for him until he's ready to open again.
Dick Tremaine says with the city's and JC's help, though, he'll soon be back at the grill serving Missouri country ham and eggs.
Well, it's going to be a while. The city was going to remodel the building, and then I have some new equipment to buy and everything to get in, but it'll probably be at least the middle of October before we get going.
But you will open again.
Hopefully.
The scope of the cleanup ahead is almost unbelievable. Nearly everything has to be replaced.
So with a little bit of help, Dick Tremaine says he'll reopen the airport cafe in October of this year. He says there will be one new thing at the grand opening, a marker to record the Great Flood of 1993, one that will be more than 6 feet higher than the old marker set in October of 1986. In North Jefferson City, Gerald Resnick, News Scene 13.
Just as they had helped to fill and place thousands of sandbags before the flood, inmates from area prisons today joined the effort to remove those bags and haul them away. That first job was plagued by the heat. This one is plagued by the smell.
This is pretty nasty stuff. It's all the backwash sewer waters, it seems like.
Were you given the opportunity to volunteer, or were you told you're going to do this?
I was one of the chosen ones because I'm a short timer there.
But you're glad you were, huh?
Oh, yeah, I don't mind helping out.
Half a dozen homes along Western Air had basements filled with backwater from the Grays Creek drainage basin. Scott Smith moved into this home just 4 days before the floodwaters rose.
I did get an opportunity to meet all the neighbors, and I just want to get on with our lives. What we want to get back to our old routines, get started, and come to the house, eat supper, work in the yard. We'll get grass in a couple of weeks. So
you're going to stay here?
Well, yeah, I think so. Right now, that's the plans. Yeah.
For the first time in more than a month, Broadway Street between McCarty and the Expressway is dry and open to traffic. The water has also drained from all but one of the state parking lots near Wares Creek, and maintenance crews worked to get rid of up to a foot of mud. Other signs of rejuvenation included the reopening of the Capitol Plaza Hotel, closed for 11 days when water flooded the garage and then cut off all access. The state health lab still has no air conditioning, and thus its specialized equipment cannot function. Newborn baby blood testing and the analysis of well water samples have been farmed out to labs in the southern part of the state.
We were able to manage about 80% of the lab work is being done currently, and the other 20% is not critical at this time and can be put on hold.
While the health lab may be back online by early next week, it could be a bit longer for private businesses like Carphonics. The owner of this car stereo shop had barely finished cleaning up from the flash flood in June when the river flood hit in early July. Here's the new high water mark. It's the black line next to the top of the door.
You have to clean it up and keep going.
So you're not going to let this river beat you?
No. No, can't let it beat me now.
Missouri farmers will endure the big loss to the flood of '93. It's estimated that 1.7 million acres of Missouri farmland was underwater at one point or another. Crop losses run into the billions of dollars. There are about 5,000 acres of farmland between Chamois and Morrison, Missouri. The farmers here have lost between $3 and $4 million in crops this summer. None of this acreage will be plantable this winter. About half of it will be plantable by spring, and some of it won't be plantable into the 21st century.
My neighbor had one in 1983, and he still isn't growing very good crops on it.
The problem here is sand.
That's just about as good a grit as you can get, I guess.
Will anything grow in that kind of sand?
I don't think weeds even grow good in there. No, it's too deep. It'd have to be stripped off, probably, carried away.
Near the levee, the sand is 6 feet deep. Elsewhere, it is shallow enough to reveal the stubble of what was once waist-high soybeans. But even here, Seifert says there will be no chance for wheat this winter. So he is doing what he has to make ends meet, selling off livestock to a friend. Ironically, that friend is also a flood victim, doing what he has to make ends meet.
So this is kind of a substitution for crop production.
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
The farmers in these bottoms need 4 major levees repaired before they can replant their fields. Meantime, they say they'll do what they've learned to do best. Hold on. Near Morrison, Missouri, Kermit Miller, News Scene 13.
And there is one more flood of 93 survivor we would like to make note of. The roots of this 80-foot, 350-year-old bur oak tree were submerged by floodwaters for more than 30 days. At one point, it was feared it, too, might be a victim of the flood of 93.
I think the tree's doing pretty well. It did get hit by lightning also last week. You can see a visible lightning strike right now. But the tree looks healthy as far as canopy development.
The tree is believed to be the oldest living bur oak in the state.
One thing we have all learned during this crisis is that the spirit of mid-Missouri is as strong as the river itself. Throughout our coverage of this historic flood, News Scene 13 reporters have come across countless examples of neighbor helping neighbor. We'd now like to show you some of that mid-Missouri generosity.
At the American Legion Hall in Hartsburg, the smell of a home-cooked meal and a warm smile make the load a little lighter for this river community fighting the floods. It's the one bright spot that gives these residents hope.
This past Sunday, we had a kind of a joint church service here in the Legion Hall at 11 o'clock. There were very few people here, but it was from the Baptist Church and the Peace United Church of Christ, and it was a very emotional little service.
Mel Reifsteck watched her home fill up with water this week, but she still took time out to think of others, not just herself.
There's got to be hope somewhere in this mess for everybody. I feel sorry for the people in Iowa and stuff. I mean, they've got it worse than what we do, but I mean, it hits home when you're talking about your own home and everything.
When disaster strikes, we find out the warmth of the human spirit gives any dark cloud a silver lining. The people of mid-Missouri have been banding together to bring a little sunshine when Mother Nature won't provide it. If you want to see how well a community effort works, just take a look at this. I'm standing in the middle of the Trinity Lutheran School gym where a flood of clothing has come in to help people in need. In fact, the church has so many clothes, it is asking other cities to take a share of the supply.
That shows that this area is very generous. They're always thinking about their fellow man, and they love everyone.
Sometimes it's the little things we do that make the difference. Janet Davidson lost her home to the flood, but she's been running all over Hartsburg collecting stray animals, hoping to find their owners.
Well, they need a place to stay, too, and I don't want to see them drown. And I love animals, as you can tell.
Janet's efforts paid off. We watched as she reunited Rufus with his owner, Holly.
Where'd you bring him? Ken Hawkins now brought him in.
This is not a river town. This is the Pine Brook subdivision in Columbia, where most of the time the residents are not even aware that the Hinkson and Pershey Creeks convene just a few hundred yards beyond these trees.
Usually the little creek bed back here is dry.
But as the sun set Tuesday evening, the water crept out of the woods and into the subdivision. Homeowner Eric Carl watched it come.
On about an inch an hour, just kept coming and coming. About 12 o'clock last night, a canoe came floating up and to give us their greetings and tell us that we had a lot of water here.
By daybreak, it was obvious this was more than the neighborhood could handle on its own. Local radio put out the call. Young people with strong backs and willing hearts descended on Pine Brook.
I worked late last night, and luckily I head off today and looking for something to do. So I think I found something to do for the day, it looks like.
Every couple of hours brought a new truckload of sand. Sandbag brigades began to circle the homes most directly threatened, those at the bottom of the cul-de-sac.
We're making the best of the situation, and we're glad we got this much support.
At times, the activity was furious. Everyone was involved. The children here are growing up fast.
Looks like your job is to turn the bags inside out.
Yeah.
Does it feel better to be able to help?
Yeah, it does. It's better than just sitting around and watching everybody.
Pine Brook neighbors would not compare their situation to what they have seen elsewhere. They don't consider it remotely significant. But it brings a direct sense of the flood to yet another city with familiar results. The need sudden, the call urgent, the response unhesitating.
Mid-Missourians' generosity was also evident during the KRCG Flood Watch Telethon. Dozens of volunteers pitched in to take phone pledges. The phones rang well after the hour-and-a-half telethon went off the air. By the end of the night, more than $60,000 was collected for flood victims.
And we are happy to report through the sale of this videotape, that amount has grown to over $200,000, with all the profits going to the local flood relief effort. Dick?
The flood of '93 has left its mark on mid-Missouri as well as mid-Missourians. In many cases, a mark that will never be forgotten. We'd like to thank you for your help through the purchase of this tape during a very difficult time. And we'd like to leave you with the words and music of Diana Starr-Gillis, who was both touched and inspired by the flood victims and those volunteers who helped them.
Don't know why there's a whole lot of rain, and there's no shelter, and I can't explain, but I know the time will bring us home again, and I will be home again, 'cause I seen brother helping brother along the mighty river road, from Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, it took its toll, but the mighty Mississippi couldn't wash away the gold, and the hearts of every brother helping brother share the load. Oh yes, helping share the load. Lugging sandbags and working day and night through the sweat of every brow was a ray of hope that helped us see the promise we see now. When we all can work together through the brotherhood of man, our faith can bring us hope, and together we'll make it home again. Make it home again. Yes, the sun was kind, and the clouds were tame. Life was just fine till the river came. Oh, but then the clouds turned to thunder, and we lost our way. Faith will bring us hope, and together the light will light our way. We watched the rivers rising, and we wiped away the tears as the flood of friends from all around the country made it here to fight the raging rivers at the levees begging sand, and the country stuck together, countless hours, hand in hand. words of man